And I want to say welcome, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And let me just see where we are here. There we go. So I want to make, before we even go into norms, I want to just make a quick little kind of announcement to just kind of like, so we can understand some things. So some of you are familiar with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And this is their definition, okay? And as we're going through this, I'd like you to kind of keep that in mind. It makes a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, though, in my mind, and I am not 100% sold on their approach. For one thing, I've kind of moved to a point where I don't really use the concept of social emotional learning. I use the concept of social emotional development. This idea that we are developing psychologically, neurologically, to know how to behave socially, how to act and regulate our everything from speech to our behaviors to our affect when we are in different environments. And classroom environment is a very specialized one. And so I think a lot of times this may be a more useful idea to think of social emotional development. And so I kind of think in those terms. And a lot of times in our educational experience with the students we have, we'll get into this, that development, that normal development or normative development has been disrupted somehow. And we need to think about where we have to be for our students. Do we have to be just teachers, parents, therapists, physicians, social workers? It's a concept that's out there today in the media, and teachers need to be everything for everyone. We have to be accountants. We have to be, security. We have to be medical. We have to be all these different things. I really don't think that's accurate. I think the teacher concept and the embodiment of the identity of a teacher can be expanded to just incorporate what we need to do. And for a long time now, I've been developing a bigger and bigger toolbox of strategies and techniques designed to help students grow. And while a lot of these are very specific tools, they can be pretty complex. But it's kind of like it kind of became this big cumbersome thing that became like, a bookshelf of cookbooks if you're trying to learn how to cook different recipes. And the way I think of this now is I was given a book last year. There was a Netflix series on it. You may have heard about it, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, that really simplifies the concept of cooking and what you have to do to 4 basic elements. And once you learn how to master the ideas of salt and using fat and acid and heat in your cooking, you get a lot of mileage out of that and can move around in different types of things. And it's kind of the same with teaching. We're going to talk about that today. So I'm looking towards helping students in a warm, safe, open, and yet still rigorous environment. And you can be you, the students can be themselves. You can support them, teach them, they can heal, and they can grow and learn. All right. As we go on, there's just some norms here for everybody as we do this today. I encourage everyone to participate positively. Use the chat if you have questions. If there's some tech issue and you can't hear me, I'd like to know that right away. Please just, speak up. Feel free to unmute yourself and talk. Shoot up a hand. I can't really see many of you, but I will do what I can to pay attention. And if I'm missing it, interrupt me. That's absolutely fine. The other thing where it says follow-up support will be provided. If there's something going on tech-wise we cannot help you with, please log out, go to the hub. Amber or Jen will help you get set up and get into this, and you'll be fine. I won't be able to help a lot with technical difficulties, but just carry on as best you can and go talk to them, and they will get you set up usually very quickly. The other thing I want to mention about follow-up support is last year, I did different sessions, but last year there were some people that contacted me afterwards to talk. And if you would like to follow up with me for more information, I've been doing some consulting and some speaking and presenting at conferences around the state for the last couple of years. And I've recently begun doing some research with the United States Navy. And so there's a lot of things here that I can bring into this that we can't get to in this hour session or even my 2-hour sessions tomorrow and Friday. But I met with one person several times last year. I was a new teacher, and they reached out to me about a week after these sessions and then throughout the year. So feel free to do that. I don't charge anything. We're all colleagues. We help each other out. That's how we do things here. Okay, so when it comes to success in your classroom, the comfort of your students, the way that they engage in learning, they bring a lot to it, but it all starts with you. I kind of use this idea, when I would, even as an administrator, when I'd be in meetings with other administrators and that's not going to work, this happens, or what if that happens, or, where their people are going to come in and that's not going to work for them and they need something else. Or they will never get it. It will never work. We can't fix this problem. My response would be, nevertheless, there are students. They are here with whatever they've brought into the classroom, and it is our responsibility to meet them at the point of their need. That's a big ask. People outside our profession have no idea what they're asking. It used to bug me a lot. I grew up in a rural area. After the military, I went back and taught there for a decade. And a lot of my friends were having children that were now my students later on in my time there. I knew people growing up there that now had relatives who were in my classes. And, the comment was, it usually would be somebody who was like a contractor or somebody who ran their own business or something. Oh, you've got it so easy. You've got 3 months off in the summer. You got all those holidays. You're done. You work from 10 to 2. You don't have to do anything else. And after a while, I would get a little frustrated. And I'd be like, dude, where was I this morning when you dropped off your kid at school? Like, I was waving at you in the parking lot. I'd already been there for an hour. And where was I when you picked up your kid and went home at the end of the day? Yeah, I was still there in my classroom, and I was there for a couple more hours. And when you came back to watch your kid play basketball or softball or whatever it was that day, where was I still? And where was I when you left to go home after the game? Yeah, I was helping clean up and do all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot more than people realize. I was always self-conscious as an administrator when I would leave the site at, a weird time during the day before my teachers. They didn't know I was going to a meeting at the district office, or I was going to another site, or going to supervise something. And that is a huge thing. I really, we don't realize ourselves even how much we put into this. This has been my first summer in a while where I haven't had to work somewhere. I only did like 1 week of summer school to cover for someone. I didn't have any school to do, but it was still packed with all kinds of work and planning and prep. We all do this. Nobody really knows. And so when we come in, these factors that I've listed here are very important. We bring baggage and stuff into our classrooms as well. But what is our attitude when we walk in the door, when we come on campus and start greeting students? Do we greet students? What mode is our ego in? Do we have good self-esteem and a good self-worth, sense of what we do is important? Do we go too far with that sometimes? Is our content and our lesson plan more important than our students? What's our mindset? Because we need to be mindful of what we are bringing in and what we are projecting to our kids. Because the minute our students look at us, they're taking in all kinds of information about us. And they want to know, primarily, are they going to be safe in our room? We have to have a good amount of compassion to do this career. It's really important because for the most part, very few of our students are going to be as passionate and excited about our content as we are. We can help bring that up. They usually don't walk in the door that way. We need a lot of competence. What's great is for the first time in a long while, I'm creating a new course that I have to deliver to a very challenging population for Hartnell. I'm going to be working with juveniles, and I'm going to be working with inmates. I'm going to be working with female inmates. I'm going to be working with prisoners in the A yard at Salinas Valley State Prison. Never worked with this population before. Never taught this particular subject, but I've got some confidence already because I am competent in the subject matter. So that frees me up to do planning the best that I can do to deliver that content in the best way. And I think a lot of what we do when we come in, we don't want to be in power struggles with people. We kind of need to step aside and look at ourselves critically and say, I don't really need acceptance from these students, whether they're teenagers or wherever they are. I don't need to be accepted completely as I am right there. If they come in as angry, rude, disrespectful, thoughtless, if they're having a bad day, if they want to hide, they want to disengage, whatever it is, I can't match that energy ever. As if I do, I'm going to lose them. And I have to think before acting and speaking. I've had to remove sarcasm, which I love personally, from my interaction with students. It does not work. There's all kinds of barriers. And man, believe me, I have screwed this up. I've learned this the hard way. When you have language learners, they don't hear the sarcasm the same way you mean it. And teenagers don't hear it the same way a Gen Xer means it. And it really can be bad. It takes a long time to prepare. I wanted you to understand something about this. There is a theory. It's part of cognitive load theory in psychology. It's actually part of neuropsychology. We can only focus on so many things at a time. We do not multitask well as human beings. We think we're good at multitasking because we can go from our phone, we can go to what we're paying attention to and look like we're attending and look like we're working. But what we really are good at doing is switching attention. We are not good at multitasking. The human brain does not actually multitask when it comes to attention and focus. And when we have this thing called cognitive load, there's so much input coming in, and we're going to get to this in a moment, that can derail what we mean to be doing and what we need to be doing. And it's up to the teacher to direct that process and remove the barriers to attention as much as we can and focus. We definitely don't want them to have an emotional response that changes their neurophysiological response to us in the classroom. So broaden and build is this idea that if we give them space to broaden their perspective, to learn and to build knowledge, they're going to build stronger recall. They literally will increase the myelin that's around those neurons. They will increase the synaptic strength and weight, and they'll be able to access that information and use it better and longer and quicker than they would have otherwise. And that's what we're searching for today. So when we look at our classroom climate, now it used to be, I taught in a portable, and the one benefit about being in, well, there were two benefits of being in the portable. One, you weren't on concrete, so it was easier on your lower back and knees and hips and stuff like that. And the other benefit was, for a long time, portables were the only place you could control the temperature in your room. You had a thermostat and you could actually adjust it a few degrees either way. Now, the central office has control over the climate, the temperature, and you'll call them and tell them, it's the temperature in my classroom is 42 degrees. We're all freezing. And they'll tell you, well, my monitor says it's 78 in your room. So they'll argue with you, and you have to figure out how to override the system. But when it comes to the emotional climate in your room, the climate for learning, you are in control. Your attitude, quiet ego, your mindfulness and observation of what's going on with your students, those just fill the room with an essence that they pick up on that creates a status and a state in your space. You are owning that classroom and creating something that exudes safety and warmth and an invitation. Your competence, your preparation, all that stuff you've got in your back pocket after years of education and training and experience, that is going to bring your confidence, your seriousness, your passion about the content and about learning. And as you create an attractive persona and status in your room, your students are going to begin to pick up on that confidence and that seriousness and that focus. And by the end of this session, you're going to learn how to spark that resilience and take them out of whatever trauma or background they have and become a better learner. Whoops, that went up there. Okay. So one of my first principals was actually a student of Harry Wong, the guy who wrote The First Day of School or whatever the book was. It was a really popular book for a long time. It was given to teachers in teacher education courses. Admin talked about it the first week of school. He was really big on a number of things. And this principal was actually a pretty good principal that I had. But he was really big on greeting students. And he was actually in the book, greeting students at the door of his classroom when he was still a social studies teacher. But one of the things that I do as a teacher, and I've always done this as a teacher, it kind of gives me a mental break and a reset between classes, is I'm up and I'm at the door. And I'm observing the quad and greeting my friends on the staff and other people and greeting students, whether they're mine or not. And I am, no matter how I feel that day, I am trying to put on, just positive, happy vibes. And what I've found is that starts to change how I feel. Giving myself that reset, dusting off the last class period, processing what went well and what didn't go well and what I can do better next time. It has really been good for my mental health and my approach. And what that does is it also sends that same feeling to my students. So I greet students every day. And this is pretty common on my campus at Mount Toro, our little quad. Pretty much all of our teachers now, we even have, when we have new teachers, they pick up on this fast and they do it. And we stand in our doorway, we tell jokes to each other, we yell at each other across the quad. We're all happy to be there, everything's great. This really shows them we're putting them before the assignments we're going to ask them to do, the work we're going to make them ask that do today. They're more important. And when I'm in class, I'm paying attention to them. And greeting them at the door lets me pick up on a lot of things. Now, in continuation, and probably in your environment as well, you notice a lot when they're coming in the room, don't you? You see students that are not doing well. You notice things about their demeanor, their dress, their body language, right? One of the most common things that came up as a theme when I was doing my study for my dissertation was this observation of students who have their ear pods in, their hoodie over their face, and they're still wearing a mask, even though they don't need them anymore. And they don't wear them when they're with their friends, but they wear them when they're going into school and going into class. I had students that I didn't recognize their face because this is all I saw of them, just their eyes, part of their nose. And they come to graduation. It's like, who are you again? You got, everything's, But I noticed that because what it turns out that is that's an avoidance strategy that's oftentimes based in fear, anxiety, and some trauma or wounding in their background, maybe even ongoing. And they want to disappear. They do not want to be noticed. So it's uncomfortable for you as a teacher and for them when you greet them by name at the door and you're up. But I've noticed that even with some of these students, they start to change. It takes a while. And eye contact after 2-3 weeks, hey, making progress. After a month or so, hey, they actually grunt at me. By the holidays, they're saying, hey, and that may be as far as we get. Or they may actually start talking to me by the end of the year. You tried. This helps eliminate fear. It gets rid of surprises. I really want to talk about reframing failure because failure is part and parcel of learning. When I was starting out after high school, I went into a military academy and I went with a Navy scholarship to commission in the Navy. And the hardest thing about those first few months was they forced us into training situations where we failed. Most of us hadn't experienced a lot of failure in our lives. School was where we felt good and we're strong and comfortable and we did great things and we were successful and recognized for that. And all of a sudden, we couldn't even tie our shoes right, couldn't make a bed right. No matter how good we were at something, it wasn't good enough. That's a horrible way to learn. But when you figure out that what's happening is everything that's going on is for the instruction of the group and reframing failure as a learning process, it gets easier over time. But creating a positive and safe environment just eliminates that fear. And the other thing I found that really helps eliminate fear is providing students with choices about things, letting them have frequent breaks when they need it. When I'm teaching and there's a quiz or something like that, and an exam, I'm really, trying to keep their phones put away, trying to keep them focused on what they're doing. But if I can tell they've done a lot of work that day and they need a break at the end, I give them 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's a good trade for attentiveness the rest of the period in my class. Rewarding them appropriately, giving them activities that they like to do. For some kids, being recognized verbally is good. Other kids hate that. They prefer just to note it on their desk on a Post-it. Great job today. I love that. Others like the verbal public praise. Learn what they get and what they don't get. And then every time they succeed, make sure they know they succeeded. And it's a huge thing because that'll build confidence. And what you'll find is that's going to spread to other classes. Once they feel like they can do something, they are going to start building greater confidence in other areas. This is why the old traditional youth programs were so good. You know, kids who are in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or 4-H, you know, FFA, those types of things, because they had the opportunity to develop skills that are difficult, like public speaking or talking to adults or just presenting themselves professionally, gaining skills and teaching it to someone else. And they got rewarded immediately for that. And I think that we miss some of that in school. Look at things from our students' perspective. So the questions I have here, those aren't random. The research shows these are things that kids are asking. The order may not be the same, but they want to know why they're there. You know, we work, we're all adults. We know there are different reasons we come to work. That changes, okay? If your life is falling apart and it's Monday morning at 6 a.m. and the alarm goes off, or 5:30 in the morning when the alarm goes off, and you get up and go to work, there's a reason. Maybe it's just to keep moving through that. Maybe it's because you really, really need the paycheck. Maybe it's burned out. You don't have the passion anymore. Things are just too heavy. Our students are coming from the same way. A lot of them come to school because they're forced to, all right? And when they get there, they want to know if they're safe. So those of us on the continuation side, we have students who, for whatever reason, comprehensive schools didn't work for them. Maybe they got in trouble. Maybe they were in danger. Maybe something's going on in their life. I mean, you know, the students that we had who they lost both parents in COVID and they were raising their siblings, okay? They may know why they're there. They may have a good reason. They may not. But a lot of times, kids who feel alone are going to be more concerned about finding connection. Kids who feel trapped there are going to focus on what difference the class is going to make for their life. All of them want something. Is it to learn a specific skill or concept? Some of my students are there just to earn their last few credits and escape. Some want to lay low and avoid any interaction. They want to be invisible and hide. You ever think that's maybe why they're asking for bathroom passes every single day, every single period? How do you look to them? How do you make them feel? I'm not judging here. I just want you to think, imagine one of your students, maybe that one student that you learned their first and last name on the first day of school last year. You know what I mean? That's usually not a good thing. How do they feel in your class? What do they feel when they see you when they're coming in? We have personality issues with our students. That's a uncontrollable thing. But we as teachers cannot afford to let them think we are annoyed with them, that we don't like them, that we think they smell bad and that they dress funny. We don't get to do that. Also, think about what's developmentally appropriate for our kids, keeping in mind what may be going on with them physiologically with their biology. Are they on the spectrum? Are they ADHD? Do they have an injury or a physical issue that makes sitting hard or difficult? Attention spans that have been modeled by social media reels and videos, but they have expected to sit quietly for 55 minutes and absorb 7 hours a day. We need cognitive balance and cultural balance. So do they. So when cognition is in balance, we can often put culture in balance and it helps them. We're talking about our classroom culture. All right, so questions. I want you to stop and think about this. We're about halfway through here. I've presented some basic background, and now we're going to get into the brain and what goes on and how we can approach that. But what are you feeling? Have I upset anybody? Feel free to speak up. I don't see any hands or anything. I'll give you a few more seconds. Yeah, go ahead. I had a hand come up. Oh, no question. Sorry. Okay.
It's not a question. You just made me think about like when we come back to school and regarding one of your slides that you had like about welcoming students, because sometimes the first thing that we do is like we set expectations because I'm like thinking about my prep, like what to expect.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe how can I tweak it to where like I'm not intimidating them, but I also want them to understand like, you know, these are rules, but you know, we'll welcome you back. And so you just made me think about that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to comment on that part because you made me change my perspective, like how we can greet our students in a positive environment and say like, hey, this is serious business. So we're going to do like pause and then switch that gear. So just want to say thank you for that.
No, that's really good and very astute because we do have to set expectations. If we don't have a seating chart, we're asking for trouble with middle and high school students, okay? And I'm in continuation. One of the things I start doing next week is looking at my rosters and trying to figure out, do I have any students who are coming back that I know have a relationship that's not productive in class, and I need to move them around. But I've always tried to make that kind of fun. I tend to let them start sitting that first period and they walk through the door. I used to tell them where to sit or have names on the desks, and that's so difficult, and it jammed me up and made it hard for me to be calm and open and warm when they walked in, because I was running my agenda. So I let them come in, and then I introduce myself and we start things slower, and then we move into that. And what I also learned was when I had to, it was also helpful to slow my roll, because let's be honest, our rosters change 500 times before the end of the first week. I'm in continuation. I get new students a dozen times a month. So, I was frustrating myself by running that agenda. And I agree with what you said, Noemi, about connecting with students with full names, which you put in the chat. One of the things that I'm going to work on more again, I used to be really good at that when I was teaching, in comprehensives and at the middle school level. My goal was to learn all their names by the end of the first week. And I was usually able to do that. And I had to practice it. I had these little things where I had them do 3x5 cards with some information, and I would sit there and flip through every period and kind of put the details with the face and where they sat. And one of the things that used to help me was the pictures on our attendance, on Synergy. The problem is we're horrible about updating those. So I have seniors and I'm still looking at their 7th grade picture. It's not the same human being anymore. There's a lot more person there, and their hair is different and their facial structure is different. And, so it's difficult. But yeah, that is so important, because calling them by name, and I was not good at this last year because I was finishing a dissertation and I was stressed out all the time. And it really affected some of my work, and also led to me making some mistakes on my attendance from time to time that I had to fix. Good questions. All right. Anything else? So I want you to think about something as we're moving through this. Think about your favorite class ever. Could be high school, college, elementary school, wherever it was. What do you remember? Did you learn more? If you can think about the teacher, picture the teacher in your mind, and what emotion do you feel? Maybe it's the warm feelings and the nostalgia of being in that moment with them. I'm kind of thinking about my 6th grade teacher, who also happened to be one of my dad's best friends. What would you bring from that experience and think about giving that to your students? Talk about something that's so loving. Think about that for a moment. I love what you're putting in the chat. You remember how much they cared. Calmness, joy, freedom, connecting on a cultural level, connection and patience. And yeah, people are saying you learned more. Well, that's the truth scientifically. We know this to be true. We used to say they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. That may or may not be accurate. It's a good little, phrase. But what they're talking about with that is absolutely true. We cannot truly learn from people we don't like and we feel don't like us. We can't, when our body and our mind are preoccupied with whether or not we're safe and cared for, learning is impaired. Okay. All right. So here's our brain. So just a quick refresher there in this slide, looking at the different parts. The general principle of neuroscience in our brain is the idea that our prefrontal cortex is more related to our personality, our higher reasoning. It's all in our frontal lobe. Motor cortex has to do with the things our body does on purpose. Notice how close the temporal lobe is to things like our visual and auditory nerves. We're just beginning to understand about how consciousness works, about how our brain literally takes visual and auditory information and becomes a time machine so we can have conversations. There's a pause between stimulus and response that we don't even perceive. You can measure it scientifically, but we're not aware of it. Our brain tricks us. When you get further down into the back, you go more to those things that we aren't thinking about, those things that are part of our response to stimulus that we don't control. The things down in the very back and bottom of the brain, close to the spinal cord, where the whole idea of flight, fight, fawn, and the other F all stem from our instincts. And it's a life-saving feature that we've evolved with to keep us alive. But unfortunately, in the few thousand years we've had in civilization, where we have classrooms and things like that, and workplaces, we have not learned to tell the difference between a tiger or a bear that's about to rip us apart and an administrator walking in to evaluate us during class. Our nervous system kind of responds the same way. And so here's kind of what's going on. We have these paths of learning. They're channels of how information flow. We're going to talk about it today as a high road and a low road. And it starts, because our cortex is our working memory, and we can only truly focus on one thing at a time. We can switch very quickly. We can train ourselves to switch very quickly. We're not fully aware of everything all of the time. We think we can multitask. Our students sure think they can multitask. They think they can sit there and work on their Chromebook, listen to you, and watch a YouTube video or TikTok all at the same time and absorb everything, but they can't. And their test scores prove it. So we have basically 3 types of memories, if you boil it down to this: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. We basically isolate those one at a time. And a lot of what goes on in our brain, a lot of what our brain does is filtering this. You're literally taking in billions of items of stimuli right now. The air movement is being detected by hair follicles on your skin. Your blood pressure is being monitored, your heart rate. Are you hungry? All those things are being done, but you're also hearing me and doing whatever else you're doing. So they come through specific sensory cortices, locations that are dedicated in the brain to those specific stimuli. And there's competition for our students' thinking. So what happens is, think of all this stimuli as an airplane coming into an airport. We've got somebody coming from the visual. We've got somebody coming in from auditory. We've got somebody coming in from kinesthetic. They're all planes landing on different runways. Your thalamus is getting this input. They're like the air traffic control tower. They're monitoring it. And they're telling where these stimuli should land and where they should be routed to. So there's all kinds of things that can be triggered in the thalamus that determine whether it's going to go to be processed as learning, or if it's going to be processed as a fear response or an emotional response. It's going to shut down that gate right now and head to the amygdala. So a simple thing like you being a male teacher or a female teacher, or is the principal in the room, or colors, smells, a single word, a gesture, proximity of the teacher, another student in the class that there may be history with, the way you ask a question, where's your pencil, a demand, get off your phone, take off your hat, take off that hood. Powerful emotions can hit them without warning, just like they can with you. How does that feel? What happens when there is that powerful emotional response, that fear response? The thalamus says, get out of here and go to the amygdala right now. The amygdala, think of these little organs near the brainstem, center brain structure, about the size of an almond, maybe in a typical adult, flood with hormones. They literally fill up. It's going to take 30 to 40 minutes for those, if there is no other stimuli, to regulate and go back down. We can teach students breathing techniques, grounding techniques, that we talk about to hasten that, but they have to consciously do it. Fight, flight, fear response has been implemented, okay? Blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, pupil dilation, all that stuff happens. You can watch it, you can monitor it. Now, let's look at the higher road though. The thalamus takes all 3 types of inputs and say, if we add maybe joy, excitement, anticipation, pleasure, novelty, the brain loves novelty, something new, okay? That opens up. The thalamus says, all right, land at the hippocampus. And so it gets to the hippocampus and routes to the prefrontal cortex, where it's processed. It can be thought about. It can be internalized. It can become part of a dispersed neural network, can be learned, recalled later, and it stays there instead of being shunted to short-term memory and locked away somewhere with weak synaptic structure, weak neural links, that good luck trying to get it, because the only way you're going to get them to recall it is by simulating the fear that they had before. So how do we fight for the thalamus? How do we fight for the air traffic controller to send it the right way? We do this with our tone, the way we interact with students, the way we present information, how we grade them. I really, we can argue about this. I don't agree with high stakes grading with students. And I've taught AP courses and I know what the purpose of them are. But this is not a college course. This is preparing them for a college course and giving them college credit for putting in the extra work. I think that we need to remember the developmental level of the people we're with and that they are still learning how to function as students. We don't have to be a psychoanalyst. We don't have to be a therapist. We don't have to do therapy with them. We don't have to be a mental health professional. We just have to keep in mind what we are there for and what they are there for, and that we want them to be calm and experience some joy in the learning process that will open them up to what we're doing. All right. If you've experienced trauma, you know these things to be true. 25 years of working with trauma, dealing with my own stuff in therapy, our self-talk kills us. And it's fed into by our society and our culture. And when it's somebody in authority like a teacher, an administrator, or an employer, it's doubly bad. We need to remember, as trauma survivors, they think about their self-worth all the time. What good am I? What matters about me? That negative self-talk gets in there, and we tie our worth to our title, our accomplishments. And when somebody tears that down or we fail at something, we lose something that made us feel valuable and good about ourselves. Traumatized people need to feel valued just for being and just for being themselves. This is critical. They have to feel like they have worth apart from how good they are at your subject, especially how good they are right now. They have to feel good about themselves, even if their trauma has impaired their behavior regulation, even if it has made them afraid of being active in your class. They can make up learning. I know we learned this. We're starting to pick up from what we lost 4 years ago. It's been a hard slog, but it's much better that you repair and teach them what it's like to be in a safe place so they can develop some self-confidence and get as much of your content as possible so that down the road they can learn more. Repair their ability to learn first. This is called resilience, and this is how we get it, okay? And I call it sparking, S-P-A-R-C. You start by seeing the student as a whole person. They come in with all their stuff, the ones we love to see every day, and the others who are also entirely whole human beings that may be difficult for us to love and care about. They're not just their behaviors. They're not just their proficiency in your subject. If you're a band teacher, they could be the third clarinet player and they may not have their fingerings memorized yet. They're a whole person, just as valued as your person who's going to go to state honor band all 4 years and make you proud by going to Juilliard. It is so important that we make them feel that way. So we need to mentally prepare ourselves for the triggers and disruptions that we're going to see in classrooms. All right, hurt people. It's harder for us. We got to take care of ourselves. Okay, prepare our students by helping them develop the behaviors they need. So we're going to coach them. We're going to guide them from day one. We're going to model our presence and our mindset and our personality in such a way that we are being respectful. I know we deserve respect from them, but we have to show it first. Nevertheless, they are not wired to do that. Many of our students' adult interactions have been negative. They have not seen too many adults that they can look up to. Take the time to earn that and build that. We need to acknowledge behaviors that can frustrate or anger us, that they have a cause. These antecedents are not usually within the student's control. We all know people who have behaviors that are self-destructive. Behavior dysregulation is part and parcel of almost every mental illness and every type of trauma. If we were so good at this and could be really proud of ourselves, there would be no issues with addiction and things like that in adults either. All our behaviors would always be perfect. We wouldn't fly into a rage. We wouldn't drive with one finger activated all the time. We would be much healthier. Give ourselves that room to do that. Give our students the room to do that. We need to acknowledge the causes of these behaviors. Assume, who does it hurt? Assume there is a reason for it. When I was first teaching, I would get frustrated with a student And then almost always, I would have to learn the hard way why they were the way they were. I would get to the end of my rope, be so angry with the student, and learn why they were broken and why they behaved the way they did. And that led me to reframe my mindset of classroom management. Classroom management is about guiding and helping. I have not written a referral, and I don't know when the last one I wrote was. I really don't. It's been more than 15 years. And I know if somebody does something, you got to write them up. But my referrals now are not disciplinary. It's, I've noticed there's something going on with this student. They need services. They need to be assessed. They need counseling. This is going on at home. So I reframed that into a compassionately motivated thing where I'm trying to help them become a better learner. I'm trying to help them develop into a good student, into an adult. And finally, what I need to do is cultivate rapport. So I have to model that from the beginning. This is part of greeting them at the door, building trust on adult authority. So I have to make them believe that it's okay to trust me and to know that I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to put them down. I'm not going to be sarcastic and bitter with them. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to be there to help them when they need it. I am going to gently pressure them to do things that they need to do, give them a choice with certain things when I can, and I'm going to respect who they are and not put them on blast publicly when things are going wrong. Students in my class know I'm going to raise my voice when something important is happening and they need my attention now. I need their attention now. Like there's an incident going on, or I need them to listen. There's a fight. Get out of there. Stay back. Okay. My loud voice gets their attention now because they don't hear it unless there's something big going on. Resilience is incredibly easy to spark. We know this from research. I know that all it takes is like one adult, one person that makes it safe for that kid to come to school today, and you've got them. You can keep getting them to come back. You never know if you're going to be that one student. It doesn't have to be a teacher. It can be the custodian. It can be, the groundskeeper. It can be an assistant principal, a counselor. It can be anybody. A lot of times it is the counselor. That's why they're calling kids out of your class so much, and you don't know why. And they're going to the wellness center because there's somebody there that makes them feel well. Are they avoiding something? Maybe. But that's where you talk to the counselor or the person at the wellness center and say, look, this person's leaving my class a lot. Can we come up with a strategy to help them be successful in my class too? Do you know something I'm doing that's maybe putting them off, scaring them away from my classroom? Do I have them in the wrong seat? It's unbelievable how many times I've gotten a kid to start coming to class just by having those conversations with other adults. It's all about focusing on what really, really matters. We got to have student success tied to standards. I know that. We need to wear a lot of hats. We only have to be a teacher. Chances are someone in the building is having success with the student that you're struggling with. Focusing on this success and well-being doesn't mean you got to kill yourself. You don't have to solve all their mental health problems or issues, fix all the broken pieces in their life. That's not your job. Reducing our practice that the things that matter most and the attitudes that get the most traction, that's going to make the difference. You may have to take yourself out of the picture a little bit. It's always good for us now. It's uncomfortable. Wow, it's uncomfortable. My church is going through some changes. And that's where I'm, being transparent. I'm noticing my implicit biases and my cultural biases that I didn't know they're there. I feel uncomfortable. And so now I've trained myself to go, why? Oh, okay. These other younger people are enjoying this. This is good. Nothing's wrong. Nothing bad is happening here. I'm safe. Cool. Roll with it. Put yourself to a point where you don't take things personally. Learn how to not take them disrespectfully, not how to take them automatically as a sign of aggression or disrespect from a student. Analyze it. Be mindful. So taking these principles and turning them into habits of mind and practice can be accomplished in about a month, believe it or not. It takes about 20 days. That's a month of teaching. Payoff comes really quick. That front loading, I really take my planning time seriously and getting ready for the year because having a plan frees me to be more mindful. We're not going to get rich in this work. We're not going to get financially wealthy unless we're, running ASB and stealing the money or doing something else illegal or unethical. But we got this potential to make a lot of impact on the future. And our work really matters. We should take some joy in that. Okay. Since coming into the alternative and continuing ed world, I felt that my work matters even more. This is weird. I have been asked in the last year, I've been called by district leaders, will you come back to do this work as an administrator? And I think about it, and the money just isn't worth it to me because I feel like I'm doing more now. So this is the career that can make you feel needed. It can also really break your heart. And it's going to break your heart sometimes if you're doing it the right way. But that in itself is not a bad thing. It's because you care. So those moments shape us and strengthen us, and we have something worthwhile to come back to. And I think that's really been important for me. So any questions or ideas from you? You know, the reason I like this picture may not be the greatest photo. This photo was taken by my students at Everett Alvarez High School at the prom as I was greeting them as they got off the bus. I didn't know they were taking this picture. Somebody zoomed in and took it. I can tell I'm so excited to see them. That's why I love this picture. All right. And I hate most pictures myself. So thanks for attending. I'm here to answer questions. Please complete the evaluation form. It's pinned in the chat. Go back up to the top of your chat and get that. In the slide deck that I provided you with, there are some resources. If you think I was lying and making all this crap up, you go and read it. It's there. So you can do that. And then I can be reached through LinkedIn, my school email, drmattfleming@gmail.com, real easy to remember. And just take this with you. Children learn more from who you are rather than what you teach. You're here, so that means you care. You're pros. You're going to have a great year. And I'll let me read. Yeah, it's up at the top of the chat if you need to do the evaluation. If there's something you want to talk about more, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you more about it. I've been doing some consulting work with some of this stuff. Did it UC Merced last month. And I'm also, most of what we do, my consulting is with an organization that is basically, I'm not allowed to say it's better than PBIS, but we're contracted with schools in Australia and Singapore that are doing really, really well. And I'll let you read the research, but that's all I'm going to say about that. But please, good luck to everybody. Have a great year. I'm grateful for you coming. And yeah, let me see if I can put those resource links in there. All right, let me stop presenting and stop sharing. And then let me get into that. And I will get that to you in just a second. My other session is a 2-hour session. And I get a little more deeper into nuts and bolts of how it works in a classroom. And unfortunately, you'll have to cut and paste those links. The hyperlinks didn't transfer over. But, you know, just feel free to use this stuff. Just please, some of it's copyrighted because it's going to be published. And so it helps my retirement income. So please give me credit for the stuff that you choose and to steal. I'm fine with that as long as my name's on it somewhere.
Sorry, you said to just cut and paste like quantum learning, SEL journal, specialist, all that stuff into the search bar? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Castle came across for some reason, but the rest didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have a great year, everybody. I know you're going to do great things. Every year it gets a little bit easier. Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay. Hi, Matt. My question is, at the beginning of the year, you know how the schools always want us to be kind of strict and implementing dress code, like no hoods, no hats. And I always struggle with that because I'm trying so hard to build a relationship in my class, and it's like automatically starts with that negativity. I don't know. I always have such a hard time because I want to follow the rules, but I'm also like trying to earn their trust. So I tend to not, I ignore the hoods because I know, like you said, those kids that walk in with the hoods, it's for a reason. You know? And
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now before I answer this.